All right, welcome. My name is Hannah Swager with the Exchange. I am manager of internships, and I have Leintz Belony here, who is an English grad from Marian University and currently works as marketing and annual giving project manager at Indiana University Foundation. So, welcome, Lentz. How are you doing today?
I am well, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. The purpose of this conversation is 100% just for you to reflect on your time at Marian, to talk a little bit about your career path and how you're applying what you learned at Marian in your career and different positions that you've had. So to get us started, do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what your time at Marian looked like when you were a student here?
Yeah, sure. Again, my name is Leintz Belony. I grew up in Speedway, Indiana, right down the street from Marion. And so when it came time to applying for school, it definitely popped up in my parameters. And I had a friend that was actually attending Marion, and they had come back to the high school for a quick visit, and I got to chat with them a little bit. And that's when I got to learn a little bit more about Marion, and they encouraged me to check it out. And then shortly a year after, I was on campus doing a tour. And so I had also looked at some other surrounding schools like IUPUI and Butler. I knew I wanted to stay close to home. I'm the first in my family to go to college, so I wanted to kind of tiptoe my way into that process, and I didn't want to be radical and go really, really far away from home. So I was a commuter for a majority of my college experience. Um, and so, yeah, and I ended up majoring in English, and I also got a concentration in communications because I was so interested in that. And yeah, so that's a bit of my experience.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit about what led you to English and communications specifically as majors?
Absolutely. So I actually started out as a pre-nursing major. And the reasoning behind that was not strategical at all. A large majority of my family members went into nursing and they're doing very well. And so they naturally pushed me to go into nursing as well. They said it was a good foundation, there was a good way to make income. There is no such thing as job insecurity when it comes to the medical field, this, that, and everything else. And I kind of set my own passions and my own needs uh, um, and goals aside and just went straight into nursing, not really knowing what I was really headed into. I wasn't really prepped for that. So I went in and a semester, and during my first semester, I kind of struggled a little bit because I just didn't have the passion for it. I just felt it in my core. I felt it in my bones that it was not what I was called to do. I just could not see myself being a nurse. Though I have great appreciation for those in my family who do it, though I have appreciation for nursing in general and anyone who works in the medical field, it just didn't really align with what I wanted to do for as a career. Even though at that time I didn't really know what I wanted to do, period. And so I went to the career center and I had a conversation with them, and they we did a few skills assessments, interest assessments, and we had some long conversations. And it turns out that my interests just did not align at all with nursing, and they were more towards the liberal arts, English, writing, communications, creativity sort of scope rather than more of the practical and analytical side of nursing. And so that's when I changed my major and I went straight into English and communications the following semester. And I'm glad I did.
I'm glad. Thank you for sharing your story because I think it's so important to talk about people who switch majors because most people do in college. Like, I'm an
Yes,
anomaly
yes,
that
they
I
do.
did not, but my husband started out as pre-nursing and switched to English as well.
And I've
So,
met quite a few, yes, for sure. My girlfriend actually, she was pre-nursing as well, and she ended up graduating with a degree in psychology. So I've known quite a few nursing majors that pivoted and went the other way.
yeah, there's a lot of transferable skills there for sure. So, that's awesome. So, can you tell me a little bit about what your career path has looked like since your graduation?
Oh man, I've kind of been all over the place. And so I was lucky enough to have a full-time job in college. I got my first full-time job as a junior at Marion, and I ended up working as a contractor for NDOT in their communications center. And first, I should say one of the regrets I do have is that I was not able to do an internship. If I could go back and do it all over again, that is something I would definitely would have set the time aside to do one for sure. That is definitely helpful, just as far as networking and building skills and getting actual work experience. I think it does um, a, a, it does a lot for young students. But in my mind, I thought working was also a bit of an internship, so I kind of went that
Oh
route.
yeah.
Yeah, and so getting actual work experience, I figured that would help me in the long run, and it did. And so I got my first
Hmm.
full-time job at working at NDOT, working in their communications center, their traffic management center to be more precise. And while I worked there all the way until graduation, and from there I through my networking after graduation, I started work networking really hard, doing a lot of volunteer efforts. I actually did a couple of internship efforts and freelancing efforts after college. I knew that I didn't want to go the teaching route. And if I did, it wasn't right then and there, but perhaps something I could look into down the line. And so I was looking at elsewhere my skills could be applicable. So from NDOT, I was lucky enough to network myself into the tech scope in Indy and started working for a startup that focused in small business marketing. And I worked there I was their senior content writer. And then from there, I just soaked up as much knowledge as I possibly could. And I started working in their digital advertising, their social media marketing, and things like that, and just soaked up as much as I could I worked there for about a year and a half. Um, to almost 2 years, and I leveraged that opportunity as best I could. And when I left there, I freelanced for a few months, working with some of those small businesses that I had been working with during my time at that tech company, and leveraged those relationships quite a bit. And then I got a full-time gig working with the Indiana United Methodist Conference, which is essentially the headquarter office for all the United Methodist churches throughout Indiana. And I worked at that job. I was a member of their communications team, and I worked at that job for a little over 5 years. And from there, I recently I started looking around to see how I can leverage my skill sets and what was next for me. 5 years is a significant amount of time that I had committed, but I knew I didn't want to do that forever. I wanted to keep looking around and seeing how else I could be challenged and how else I can continue to learn and grow in this field. I really like communications. I really like marketing, and I wanted to see where else I could go. There wasn't much opportunity for um, upward mobility at my old job, but also I just wanted to see something. I had a knacking for something new, something different, and I started poking around, and I my interest led me to the University Foundation, and I've been working there since January of this year, and I am a member of their marketing and annual planning team. And I work we work on marketing aspects to help fill up their donor pipeline and work with the different schools and units throughout Indiana. And it's been really a joy to be a part of that team.
That's awesome. I really appreciate your answer because you've included two components that I find like so valuable in people's career. People's career path. One of them is the need to always be challenged. Like if you feel like you're not learning and growing where you are, sometimes it is time to move on, and that's okay. Like it's okay to be honest about that. So I really appreciate that. But also, you were talking about networking your way into different positions, and that is the number one way to find a job. Do you think that you can speak a little bit to what that looked like, especially as an English major? I feel like a lot of us enter into the into the English major role, or at least I did, because I like to write, and I sometimes have a difficulty articulating myself in person. So, like, especially for those who are reserved, like, what are your recommendations for networking in your career?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I need to say this. I struggled. I'm gonna be just honest with you. I struggled so much with networking for a number of years. And what I had to basically practice and just learn. And I also observed some cohorts that were networking as well. And I took a little bit of each and I kind of piecemealed together my strategy as far as networking. And for me, I'm a bit of an introvert, but I can put on an act for, for as long as I need to. You know what I mean? So I just approach it like a conversation, and um I try to showcase my excitement for what I do, as in writing in English and my interest in marketing. And I honestly just try to connect with whoever I'm talking to, and then I kind of leave it, kind of like handing somebody a business card saying, "Hey, if you hear of any opportunities out there, please think of me and let me know." Or if you know, right, the best route for me to take moving forward, I would love to continue having this conversation. So for me, it looked a lot like that. I also leverage LinkedIn quite a bit, just for learning and connecting and reaching out to folks that I normally wouldn't do in like actual day-to-day life, but just using that opportunity to just reach out and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm interested in. I'd love to know more about you. Let's chat some more and see, see where that goes. It's a little bit like the speed dating strategy, but for networking. So if you don't think you're good at all at networking, don't be hard on yourself. I had to learn and relearn and practice over and over again until I got to a point where I think I was comfortable.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate your wisdom on that, and you're speaking all of the advice that I would give to a student coming
Yeah, and
in for
and
sure.
yeah, and if I may add, I want to say even when you do land the job, the networking has to continue. You never know where those partnerships can take you. And I've seen so many scenarios where people's lives have changed and they've got onto another company and they've had new opportunities come their way simply because they continued to to network while being at that job. And it's something I see every single day. In my field, these people continue to network. They continue to talk about their interests and their, and what pushes them and what fuels them and where they want to go. Be very vocal about that. There's nothing with a wrong. Even your boss. At first I was a little nervous about that, but even your boss, it's okay to share with them where you want to go with your career. Just be honest about what you want and go for your dreams. But the networking does continue even when you do land a stable role somewhere.
Yeah, and I would venture to say that it's more authentic connections and like way less pressure when you're not looking
Yeah,
for a job because it's like, hey, I'm curious about what you do. Can we have a quick phone call or, meet for coffee just to talk about what it's like to be in marketing or whatever. Anyway, I find that a lot more comfortable than I did
absolutely.
when I was looking for a job, and I felt like more pressure. So that's awesome
Yeah,
advice.
I could not agree more. There's definitely that pressure when you are looking for a job, and it's a little hard to be authentic when you are looking for a job because, normally those conversations would not happen if you were not being intentional about trying to get your name out there and see what hits, what sticks. So
Yeah,
I get that.
absolutely. Well, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about what you do now. I know that you're only like a few months into your current role, but can you give us an idea of what your day-to-day looks like at the Indiana University Foundation?
Absolutely. So I am a project manager, and my day to day looks like a series of meetings and catching up with different folks from our stakeholders all the way down to our creative team. And I kind of serve as a liaison between the two, between our creatives, the people that create the deliverables and the marketing assets that we need, and then our leaders, like our creative director and our vice president of marketing, as well as our vice president of development, and then also with our stakeholders. So I'm managing lines of communications with all those different people and ensuring that we're hitting the benchmarks we need to hit when it comes to getting those projects done on a timely basis, and also keeping those communication lines open in case there were to be an interruption, in case I do anticipate that we're not going to be able to complete a project on time. So my job is to help push projects across the line while also keeping in mind that folks have a myriad of different projects on their tables that they need to take care of. In the meantime, I'm also training. I'm doing a lot of technical training as far as our project management tools that we use and the different resource tools that we use on at the foundation. Also, I'm using that time to, again, kind of build relationships and get to know the different folks around the foundation. So part of my training plan is setting up one-on-ones and learning about different people from all the way up from the president's office to the analysts to the IT department, getting to know folks, what they do, what they're interested in, and also how does that relate to my day to day, and how we can partner together and leverage each other to get the job done and get it done efficiently. So that's kind of a broad explanation of what I do, but it's a lot of meetings. To be more technical, a lot of meetings, a lot of emails, a lot of checking off boxes, a lot of checking in with the creative team. Given my previous role, I worked on a really small, tight knit team, and I really want to keep that aspect moving into this team. So I'm checking up on different members of the creative team all the time, just giving them a heads up of what's going to change, what's coming down the pipeline, checking up on them mentally just to see how they're doing and seeing what they do because they have to manage a lot, and we can't get it done without them. And I'm also tasked with one of our and I'm not and this is I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but it's called the ThinkView video campaign um, platform, and it's a video marketing tool where we're able to have students record a quick thank you video, and they submit that to us. I edit the video, get the messaging together, and I'm able to shoot that off to our donors just to let them know as a stewardship effort to let them know that we're grateful for what they do and how they've given and partnered with us recently. So I am the manager of that specifically on my team. So that's part of the role as well. But yeah, a lot of back and forth, like I said, emails and checking in and making sure things are going well for a medley of different projects across the board.
Okay, it sounds like you've got a lot of different moving pieces. So as you're talking, I'm just thinking, in my mind anyway, how strong an English major is for a role like this. Anyway, and I just wanted to kind of explore that. Like, how do you think that your studies in English and communication have informed you as a professional in this role specifically?
Absolutely. So right off the bat, I notice I'm quick to notice where there's opportunities to communicate things a little differently or a little more specifically, given my background. One being an English major, having a degree in communications and having worked in communications for the past 5 to 6 years, immediately I can always see where communications can be harnessed a little more and be fortified a little more, I should say in the content creation process or whatever creative process you may have. So number one, that was my first goal is as soon as I walked in, how can I implement that as much as possible? How can I implement communications in everything we do? Healthy and active communication, I should say. And so one of those one of the tools we have at the job is Microsoft Teams, and it's a new platform, and a lot of folks are not very comfortable with it just yet. They're coming from a Skype world where they used that for a number of years as their internal communications process or a tool, their internal communications tool back and forth. And I come from a Slack world, and so I love my Slack, and Microsoft Teams is the closest thing to Slack I have now. And so I'm leveraging that every day. Like I'm messaging people. I think it's a great way because we're working remotely. I don't get to go down the hallway and pop into someone's office and ask a quick question. But with Microsoft Teams, I'm able to do that, and I'm also able to pick up on the little tidbits that you likely would not share in a collective meeting. And so that helps me out a lot also. And I think it makes the team feel good to know that somebody's able to reach out to them and they have this non-formal um, a platform where they can just talk and chat, and conversation can twist and turn as it needs, but we can still keep up and get the job done. So I think for me, that's my main focus, is using what I've learned in communications and English to communicate clearly, communicate well, and make sure that we walk away from a meeting or a project knowing what our rules are, and making sure that we're not just um, reading and writing, but also being comprehensive in our communication as well. So
All
that's
right,
that's what
thank
I try to
you.
offer. Yeah,
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that having a background in like English and communications helps you like adapt your communication for all these different things. You know, we're in a world where people are texting, for business deals. I had a student once who got a job offer over text, and they're like, "How do I respond to this professionally?" And I'm like, "Oh man." Anyway, you just have to be able to adapt to whatever communication method and like what the norms are for that, and considering your audiences anyway. So I
yeah.
think that the analysis skills, like, just really help you consider your audience and adapt your communication easily between those different groups. So that's awesome. I
And I just
appreciate
want to
that.
say, I've had that happen to me. I've been offered a job through text, and it was with someone I was really comfortable with. I would almost call us friends, and I didn't take them seriously. I didn't know how to take it. I didn't know how to read it at that time because I thought they were joking. I was like, surely you wouldn't offer me a job over text just casually in a conversation. Like, that's not a real thing. So, but yeah, no, it happens. That is the way of our world right now. And so you got to
It
expect those
does.
things.
Yes,
Yeah,
you do. Expect
yeah,
the unexpected. So
absolutely.
I love it. So, what would you say are some of the greatest joys in your job and some of your challenges as well? We all have both, I think, no matter what role we're in, for sure.
Yeah. I'm happy to share that one of the reasons that I signed up for this job was during the long interview and onboarding process. They shared with me that when COVID hit last year, the foundation immediately paused all its solicitation efforts and immediately put a focus on the students, because they realized that there was a great need in the student body. A lot of students, for example, international students that were stuck and were unable to travel back home, or maybe had lost communication with their families back home, those that were struggling for just the basic essentials and needs. They launched a campaign, which I ended up taking over when I came on, which was the Student Emergency Funds campaign, where they encouraged people to give specifically to help those students. And that really touched me. And when they shared that, that was really the winning point for me during the interview process. And that's one of the things that really pushed my decision to come work for the foundation, because they were able to set their own prerogatives aside and to focus on the humanity. And if there's anything I've learned throughout this past year in COVID land, it's that the humanity is really what this everything encompasses. No matter what business you work in, or no matter what sector you're involved in, and that really, really touched me. And so I really, really love that. I love that where one, generally speaking, it's fascinating to see how you can motivate people to give to certain causes. It's also interesting to learn what causes people give to and in what ways. I recently learned that people have a gauntlet of different things they like to leave to IU after they pass, including property, a yacht, a mansion, land, cattle. I mean, all sorts of really odd
Paddle?
things. So, yes, yes,
Oh my
that's a real
gosh.
thing. So, to me, that's fascinating to learn things like that, but also how you can motivate people to give to a cause, and how you can, and on the flip side of that, how you can encourage them to continue giving. And I love how the marketing and communication really plays into that aspect. So I really love that. I love what I'm learning. I love the way I'm being challenged right now. I love looking at things from a nonprofit standpoint. Um, I think it's interesting because when I got into nonprofit work, I thought it was going to be a lot slower and easier. I was completely wrong. It is not at all easier or slower. I mean, we are booking it every single day. So I love that about the job, that it's challenging, and that I love the aspect of motivating people to give to a greater cause and being a part of something greater. I really, really like that. And finding what make learning about people, also learning what makes them not what makes them tick, but what fuels them, what encourages them, what pushes them to do certain things. I love that that learning aspect. What's challenging about the job is, I would think, I can say, is learning how to learn, and that is something I've had to do at every job. Um, Learning the landscape, finding out where you fit in, finding out with whom you fit with, and learning your role a little bit, and kind of learning how to grasp at this opportunity you've been given. Um, but one thing that has really helped me in that is that I'm not afraid to ask questions. And from day one, it's something I think helped me get this job. They mention it quite a bit. They're like, you're not afraid to ask questions. You're not afraid to be honest. And and that has actually revealed a lot of some of the loopholes we have at the foundation. And we're actively working right now to build a stronger fort in our communications, in some of our processes, and just about everything we do. And also because I have fresh eyes coming in without the prior knowledge, that puts me in a unique space where I can share, where I'm able to see things with with a different perspective. So I would say, as far as challenge goes for me right now, given that I'm only 3 months in, it's just finding out what my role is, learning the dance, and learning when I can press gas and when I can kind of back off a little bit. I still want to keep that fly on the wall mentality, just learning and soaking up as much as possible, and then figuring out when it is best for me to kind of jump in and speak my mind and say what needs to be said, or say what folks might be tiptoeing around or afraid to say for themselves. So, and I know that's not original. I think everybody's going to deal with some aspect of that in whatever, role you take, whether it be a new semester of college or a new job. But that's just one of those things you're not going to be able to avoid.
Well said. Thank you. I wanted to know if you could share with us some of the highlights of your career so far.
Oh, yes, I'd love to. I would love to do that. One of the biggest highlights that comes right to mind is I got to go to Africa a couple years ago, and that was
Awesome.
so
Where?
Zimbabwe.
Very
That
cool.
was highly unexpected, highly unexpected. And and again, going back to kind of the networking thing, I did not. I'm working for the United Methodist Church. I not only network with the folks that I worked with, and some of the leaders of that organization, but I also network with folks, some of those one-off folks that work on the outskirts of the headquarters, and people in the local churches, just getting to know them on a personal note because you rub shoulders with them so many times, and word just kind of gets around about you, and what kind of person you are and how you make people feel. And one of those folks really took to me, and they really liked me, and they really liked what I did, and I was helping them market this trip to Zimbabwe to go visit one of the universities. The trip circumferenced a university that was funded and supported by the United Methodist Church, and they wanted to encourage a group of young clergy to join them on this trip to the university, while also kind of they would leverage the trip to kind of learn a little bit more about the culture in Zimbabwe and take on the sites a little bit. My job was to help that person market that trip to said audience, and we worked on it for about a year. And she calls me one day and she was like, "Well, what about you?" I'm like, "Me?" She's like, "Yeah, why don't you come with us? You're a communicator. You could take photos, you could write stories, you could do a lot with this." And I'm like, "I'm really busy. This is just not going to work out." I had a million excuses as to why I shouldn't do this. It wasn't realistic in my mind that I would be going to Africa. Well, it turns out that she had some serious pull, and she went above my boss's head and talked to my boss's boss and urged them to allow me to come with them and join them on this trip to Africa. And 24 hours later, my boss comes to me and he's like, "Do you have a passport?" I'm like, yeah, I do. What's that got to do with anything? He's like, yeah, you're going to Africa. Pack your bags. I was
Oh
like,
my gosh,
and they
that's
funded
awesome.
the whole thing. That was
Wow.
yeah, I paid nothing out of pocket. So that's a huge highlight. Work wise and life wise, I will never forget. Africa was on my bucket list. I didn't think that would happen, and there I was in Africa watching elephants cross a river and all sorts of amazing experiences. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful, and I'm grateful for that.
That's
Um,
incredible.
yeah, absolutely. I want to say also working for the uh, the United Methodist Conference, I got to learn a lot more about my landscape. Because churches, we have over 1,000 congregations throughout Indiana. A lot of times I would have to travel to places around Indiana I'd never heard of. And so that's really how I got to learn. I learned so much more about Indiana throughout those 5 years. Um, and I got to learn about and meet different people. And you kind of get that feel of you kind of get you learn a little bit more about the land and you learn a little bit more about the people, but you also get to see what makes us all unique across the board, right? So going from I live in central Indiana in Indianapolis and going to places like Monticello or going down to Evansville, you kind of get to take in the different landscapes and learn more about different people throughout the state, and you can see what makes them diverse and different and unique in their own way, but still they're Hoosiers. Um, I think, yeah, I think those are the two things I would mention right off bat is my trip to Africa and just the vast experiences I had just traveling throughout Indiana. A few years ago, I wrote a story while working for the United Methodist Church. Um, we went to a local uh, county fair up in Northwest Indiana, and this county fair, this particular family, they have a tenderloin booth, and within a week's time, they make upwards of about $15,000 in sales, and of which they give all of it to charities throughout Indiana and
Oh, that's
across
so
the world.
cool.
Yeah, and like, I mean, just thinking about that, it's like, what? You just bewildered. Yeah, a tenderloin booth helps to fund missionaries and mission efforts and charity efforts throughout the world. And so getting a chance to write that story and put that out there was really, 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 really awesome. I just enjoyed putting the story together, but it was great because that really spoke to some of the folks that are outside of central Indiana and some of the folks that live more simple lives, and that really helped them kind of see like what we do really does matter and it does make an impact. And so I'm glad I got to kind of share in that experience. And I also had the chance to write a story about a kid that used 3D printing to create straps for masks last year during the pandemic. I had a lot of pandemic stories that I was able to be a part of, and that was one of the really really cool ones. Um, and so that was a really really cool story. The kid with the 3D printer printed, I think, oh, I don't know, thousands of those straps and gave them to first responders and people throughout his community and his school and things like that, and people on the front lines of COVID response. And that was his way of contributing to, the overall efforts of combating this virus. And that was really cool. I mean, that an 11-year-old kid again could make that big of. So the ongoing theme here is like storytelling, getting a chance to meet really cool people, write some really cool stories, and just learn about, people and just be part of that human experience.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you could be a part of telling those stories and getting that out there. Anyway, and this response in itself has been a story that spans over so much. Zimbabwe, pork
Yeah,
tenderloins.
yeah, I know. I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
Yeah, great. Now you covered so much and like provided so much meaningful advice for current students, but is there anything else that you would say to current students who are considering a career path in communications slash marketing? Is there any other career advice you would give to them, either in general or specific to your field?
Yeah, so a challenge I have for myself, having graduated from Marion, as I stated before, I knew teaching just wasn't, at least at least not at that time, in my calling. And I get it. People hear English and they immediately think, "Oh, you're going to teach English," or they say things like, "Don't you already speak English?" I get it.
I
Yeah,
heard
we
all of
get it.
that. Yep,
You've
been
heard.
there.
I'm sure you have. And obviously, to be honest, I was concerned. Folks said, "How are you going to eat with a degree like that? What does that get you? How are you going to be able to keep down a job?" But I knew going in that, one, I didn't want to teach, but I also knew that I wanted to see what I wanted to know how I can leverage this degree to enter spaces where English degrees normally would not pop up in. You wouldn't expect. And so I really wanted to kind of forge my own way. And one thing I had to learn is that your road to success, your road to your goals is never going to be a straight line. And I'm gonna go off tangent here. Some of it was not based on strategy, but some of it also had to do with faith. Just kind of knowing that at the end of the day, I was going to be okay, and I was going to be provided for and cared for, um, and all I had to do was give it my all. And my goal was to um, make sure that whatever room I entered, I was the best version of myself that I could possibly be. And I always put forth my the best first impression I can. But it's not going to be a straight line. There's curves, there's dips, there's inclines. It's going to look different for everyone. Don't expect it to look exactly how you envision in your head, and be and I know this is not very concrete, but be willing to take risks and be willing to say yes. You'd be surprised how that changes your mind. When I got on at the United Methodist Conference, or heck, at every job I was at, even if it had nothing to do with my role, I was willing to learn it. Whether it had nothing to do with what I did on a daily basis, I was willing to go in and try it and give it my best. And over time, that mentality has continued, and that has what helped me grow tremendously in my career. And I'm still doing that to this very day. So my mindset is, if you're looking to get into communications and marketing, be ready and willing to roll up your sleeves and do some unconventional things. Oh my gosh. I started off, handling a lot of our written content, where when I was with the United Methodist Church, then I got into our social media marketing, and I headed that for the entire time I was there, developing social media plans and marketing plans and digital ads and things like that. I helped to get that started, but also I started to get an interest in videography, and they were willing to pay for me to go and get some crash courses with an actual freelancer to learn how to start our own videography department at the company. And I would head that. Now, that was terrifying. I feel like I did not know what I was getting myself into. But I really liked it, and I gave it my all. And shout out to YouTube, because there were a lot of late nights, scouring YouTube for answers. But again, I did it, and I learned, and I grew, and I'm a lot better for it. So be willing to roll up your sleeves and just jump in and figure things out. So
All right. Well, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I've appreciated hearing your wisdom today, and I think that a lot of students will really benefit from it. So thanks so much for coming today, Lentz.
yeah,
And yeah, I I'm gonna stop the recording here real quick.